The villains of Dragon Ball are all unique in their own way. Or are they? Have you ever noticed how a lot of Dragon Ball villains have a transformation sequence or similar motives as far as attaining ultimate power? Well, we've noticed the villains have a certain pattern, so today we thought we'd look over some of them. Keep in mind this obviously won't apply to every single villain, but just enough for it to be a noticeable trend. It's Villainy 101 to have a horde of low-level lackeys obey your every whim. Scores and scores of barely trained soldiers to fight, conquer lands, and most importantly, die for ya. That part is crucial. Many of Dragon Ball Z's staple bad guys have minions to fight for them, the largest being Frieza's army. His was in the thousands with several advisors, and on top of that, he had a group of elite campy warriors known as the Ginyu Force. Vegeta and Nappa grew their own soldiers to thin out the weaker Z-fighters, sorry Yamcha, with the Cybermen, the plant-like aliens that grew from seeds. Finally, Cell could spawn Mini-Me's, his perfect form that proved to be the strongest lackeys of the three villains. It took Super Saiyan 2 Gohan to take all of them out. Call them whatever you want, cannon fodder or more accurately Saiyan fodder, or cheap cronies, a healthy stock of minions is a must-have if you want to be a Dragon Ball villain and be taken seriously. If the good guys can simply dye their hair to power up, villains can take it one step further and transform their entire bodies. Transformation is the quickest way to increase your overall power level and strike fear into the hearts of your enemies. It works so well in video games, and you know you're in for a world of hurt when a bad guy gets bigger, faster, and stronger. Plus, a new form also means a new action figure when the toy sales come out, and that's most important. Back to Dragon Ball. All the best villains have transformation sequences, or new forms. Vegeta has the least with just 2. In the Saiyan Saga, he could transform into the mighty Great Ape form, a giant King Kong-like beast that all Saiyans can transform into if they have a tail. He lost his when Yajirobe cut his tail off. Frieza had not just 2 or 3, but 4 total transformations, if you count Golden Frieza in Dragon Ball Super. Majin Buu also had a number of transformations from Fat Buu to Kid Buu and Super Buu. Finally, Cell reached his perfection by absorbing androids 17 and 18, gaining a new form in the process. When in doubt, transform! So, the Spirit Bomb is supposed to be this end-all be-all attack made up of an entire planet's ki. This attack is massive, nearly inescapable, and can only be wielded by one of pure heart. So why is it that almost every single person it's been used on lives or is able to escape death from the Spirit Bomb? Now, the Spirit Bomb is used more in the films, which aren't canon for the most part, but in the main shows it's been used a number of times to varying degrees of success. Seriously, this thing is nearly the size of a moon or large meteor and is made of pure energy. On paper, it should fry nearly everything it hits. However, Vegeta and Frieza have both survived their encounters with the big blue ball of death. It could almost be called a rite of passage in the Dragon Ball Villains Club to survive this attack. The only villain it has for sure been effective on has been Kid Buu in their final battle on the Kai homeworld. All in all, this attack has a less than stellar success rate, and the mark of any good Dragon Ball villain is surviving this and continuing to fight. Much like a duel at high noon in a Western movie, a battle can be won with a single decisive blow. In Dragon Ball, that final blow is the flashiest and usually the biggest attack they can muster to end this once and for all. Those other attacks, they were just for show. No one has really taken that much damage, and it all comes down to the final meeting of power. Of the major battles in Dragon Ball, one last attack can make all the difference. Perhaps the most famous example of this is the multi-episode long duel between Cell and Gohan where the two clashed Kamehamehas. This was for all the marbles. For the fate of the Earth and the entire universe, Gohan needed to beat him here and now. They traded blows, and Cell even died, only to regenerate stronger than ever. Even when a battle isn't drawn out over many episodes to focus on one attack, the final blow can be a doozy. The rare moment when Frieza and Goku teamed up to fight Jiren and deliver the winning blow was a spectacular display of teamwork and raw power. Much like a slam dunk or the winning touchdown, a villain's final attack can make the entire fight memorable. This is another villainism that permeates all popular action media. From the villain's speeches in James Bond to all the supervillain monologues in comics, bad guys just love to talk about themselves, their evil plans, or how they're so much better than the heroes they're fighting against. In Dragon Ball, this is a show of power. This is reserved for the more egotistical bad guys and not the roided-out monsters like Buu. The two biggest examples of this would be Frieza and Cell, which makes sense. Frieza is a space emperor who's conquered many planets and employs millions under him. So of course he has an ego the size of a planet. When Cell becomes perfect, he sees himself as just that, perfect. Anything else is just beneath him. On top of making a show of his power with the Cell games, he makes it a point to show just how much better he is than whoever he's fighting by talking down to them at every turn. Monologuing is a tried and true trope that all villains do. Some might even call it a cliché. Well, cliché or not, it's something we all expect from the greatest bad guys. This is more in line with the previous rule, as the root of it is ego and arrogance. In the Dragon Ball universe, you'd think that word would spread that Goku is the strongest being in the galaxy, yet time and time again, villains underestimate him and end up paying the price. In classic fashion, the villain thinks they have all but won this fight before it even began. They think they're the most powerful beings in the universe, capable of destroying planets and entire cities with a mere thought, and this lone orange hilly-billy dares to come up and challenge them? Of course, as we all know, it doesn't go exactly how they want. Sure, they may get a few cheap shots in and manage to work Goku over for a good long while, but then things start going the other way for them. Soon they're on the receiving end of a Kamehameha, and boom, the fight's over. The moment that perfectly encapsulates this feeling is perhaps the most famous scene in all of Dragon Ball Z. When Nappa wants to know Goku's power level, Vegeta exclaims in his frustration and shock that his power level is over 9,000. Nappa, not wanting to believe such a power level is possible, still charges at Goku. This next one has more to do with showmanship than anything else. You don't begin a fireworks show with the finale, and you don't have your climactic finisher right out of the gate. The same is true for a Dragon Ball fight. It starts with a stare down, the two forces of good and evil sizing each other up before the initial salvo of blows and blasts. One-liners are exchanged, the tides of the fight wavering between one side and the other before things get serious. It's what makes Dragon Ball fights such a spectacle. We get multiple episodes of high-octane action before coming together for the final showdown. During this fight, power levels will rise and transformation sequences will begin, and a test of strength and skill will take place over 10 episodes minimum. A great example of this would be the fight between Frieza and the Z-Fighters. Over the course of 20 episodes, Frieza takes on Krillin, Gohan, Piccolo, Nail, Vegeta, and finally Goku. Frieza goes through all 4 forms and Goku attains Super Saiyan for the first time. We even get to have a fight while the planet itself is being destroyed. This gives us the famous moment known as the longest 5 minutes in anime, where it's claimed that Namek will be destroyed in 5 minutes. While the villain themselves might have lackeys to die for them, the heroes have an equal but opposite force, the side characters. Dubbed the Sea Fighters, the gang consists of Krillin, Yamcha, Tien, Chaozu, Piccolo, and Gohan. In the original Dragon Ball, these fighters, save for Gohan, were a major force to be reckoned with. However, once Dragon Ball Z rolled around, they were just the north side of useless. We've all seen the running jokes about Krillin and how many times he's had his little bald butt handed to him. In any case, it's the mark of a good Dragon Ball villain to make utter fools of these underlings and systematically take them out. Many famous scenes from Dragon Ball Z center around the villains practicing their deadly moves on these secondary characters. One of the more famous scenes being when Frieza ends Krillin's life right before Goku's eyes, the resulting trauma being the main motivation behind him turning Super Saiyan for the first time. From Yamcha being blown up by a Cyberman to Piccolo being turned to stone, the Z-Fighters have their fair share of abuse at the hands of Dragon Ball baddies. When you're dealing with power levels, a villain has to be capable of great power. These villains have done a lot. Some have conquered solar systems, some are the pinnacle of science and engineering, and some of them have been royalty to an entire race of space warriors. The point is, when you're dealing with villains of this caliber, it's important to show just how powerful they are. Some, for instance, can vaporize an entire planet without much effort. People often overlook that in the early days of Dragon Ball Z, before Vegeta was a good guy, he destroyed a planet on his way to Earth. Nappa could level a city with just the snap of his fingers, and Cell could self-destruct and destroy an entire planet as well. However, despite all the major villains having the power to level planets, they're incapable of beating a lone warrior, Goku. Sure, Frieza was willing to blow up Namek, but that took much more time than when he destroyed Planet Vegeta, and he ended up losing that fight. A common trend for your average Dragon Ball villain is that they have the power to level cities, planets, and in some cases entire galaxies, but fall before the might of just one guy. The Dragon Ball Z universe is chock full of weird and bizarre creatures, and that means there are a ton of aliens. Well, to be fair, Goku and Piccolo are aliens, but the fact still remains that in order to be a Dragon Ball villain, you have to be an alien, or something else that we'll talk about in the next entry. After Dragon Ball ended, it became clear that no one on Earth could really best Goku and his friends. So when Dragon Ball Z came around, Akira Toriyama needed to look into space. And then we got our villains. It all started with Raditz, Goku's brother who came to Earth in order to conquer it. After that plan failed, Vegeta and Nappa also came to Earth in search of the Dragon Balls. This then ended in their defeat, but the Z-Warriors were mostly dead as well. To fix this, they ended up going to Namek, where Frieza also landed. Finally, Majin Buu is a weird case. He's kind of part alien, part demon, part something else entirely. It can be said for sure that for a Dragon Ball villain to be successful, they need to be non-human. You remember in the previous entry when we mentioned that we'd be talking about the other kind of villain? Yeah, we're referring to robots. If they're not aliens, they're robots. The Dragon Ball franchise has had a lot of androids, 21 of them if you want to get technical. Created by the Red Ribbon Army, these mechanized marvels range in power, but they were created for either taking over the world or for the later models and Goku's life. Even the good doctor who made them wouldn't be spared into being made into a metal man. He became Android 20 and fought along with another android, a big old clown-looking one designated Android 19. While they were powerful, it didn't take long for them to be destroyed. When you think of androids in Dragon Ball Z, the thought immediately goes to androids 16, 17, and 18, but technically speaking, Cell was an android as well, although he's the only android to not be numbered. Cell aside, 16, 17, and 18 are without a doubt the most popular androids of the bunch that have been built. Android 17 and 18 even come back to fight for Universe 7 in Dragon Ball Super, which leads us to our next entry. The old saying goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Well, in Dragon Ball, the saying rings true in so many ways. It's not uncommon for antagonists and villains to become allies after fighting Goku. After all, Goku only fights for the sake of fighting, not for glory or for a sense of justice. In the original Dragon Ball, half of what would become the Z Fighters started out as antagonists or villains. This includes Yamcha, Tien, and Piccolo. In fact, at the very beginning of Dragon Ball Z, Piccolo was technically still a villain. After Vegeta was defeated on Earth, and then again on Namek, he sort of just became part of the good guys. Heck, it may have taken the threat of the whole universe being destroyed, but Frieza decided to shack up with Goku and the gang to fight alongside them. Sure, this might be more of a truce than a friendship, but it's really all the same when you both inhabit the same universe. After the Cell games and the bombs were wished out of them, Android 17 and 18 turned a new leaf and decided to end their destructive ways. Android 18 even got hitched with Krillin. Despite the namesake, the Dragon Balls are used almost exclusively by the good guys, and the majority of the time they're used to bring back dead people, especially in Dragon Ball Z. The search for the Dragon Balls was really more prevalent in the original, where there were multiple parties interested in finding them. However, in both Z and Super, the Dragon Balls kinda take a back seat. In Dragon Ball Z, Vegeta and Nappa are in search of the Dragon Balls after they discover their existence. But as soon as they land on Earth, they're more interested in wiping people out and fighting. Frieza's whole mission was to get the Namekian Dragon Balls, but once he had all of them, he couldn't figure out how to use them. Plus, it didn't help that he also killed most of the Namekians in order to get them, but that's another story. Cell wasn't even interested in the slightest when it came to the Dragon Balls. He was perfect. What more could he ask for? The same could really be said for Majin Buu, but he may have been too dumb to use them or know what to wish for. In a world of Kamehamehas and Destructo Discs, and where getting a hole blown through your chest is considered normal, the Senzu Beans are a godsend. Grown by Korin in his tower, these magical beans are capable of restoring a fighter's stamina and curing all physical injuries. These things are a staple of the franchise and are used by the heroes in a pinch. So with all this talk Senzu Beans and their use, why hasn't a major villain looked into using them or learned how to grow their own? It's not like they're unaware of the Senzu Beans. In Dragon Ball Super, Frieza sees the Z Fighters use the beans to recover from their fight. Cell's even given a Senzu Bean before facing Gohan. If any of them knew the truth about these magical plants, there's no telling how powerful they'd become. Every major villain in Dragon Ball Z has either seen or has consumed a Senzu Bean. And at no point have they put together that having a stock of beans at their disposal would make them a formidable foe. It might even give them the edge they need to finally beat Goku, but that's unlikely. All good things must come to an end. It really is that simple. It comes for all of us, but it comes for villains even faster. Dying. With every great battle, there has to be one winner and one loser. With the absolute power of Dragon Ball fighters, the loser more often than not ends up dead. After the final showdown, after all the monologues and speeches, the show of power ends with the villain defeated and killed in a spectacular fashion. The day is saved, and there's one less being out there wreaking havoc upon the world and threatening the innocent. Frieza, Cell, Buu, the androids, all of them have met a fate fitting their evil lifestyle. Even if you atone for your evil ways, a gruesome death can't be avoided. For example, look at pacified villains like Vegeta, Tien, and Yamcha. They're all known good guys that start out evil or as bad guys and were killed. Sure, they may have been good guys when they died, but that only supports this strange rule even more. If you're a villain and do harm to others, one way or another, you'll end up dead at the hands of a villain more powerful than you. So, those were just some of the strange rules Dragon Ball villains have. Do you agree with our list? Let us know in the comments down below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to get notifications from more CBR.